Tonight on CFTK-TV, Mark Carney calls a snap election only 5 weeks away. A future LNG site sees a hefty financial boost, and the personal side of immigration.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damon Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. We begin tonight with the news across the country where, despite being in office for just over a few weeks now, Prime Minister Mark Carney has officially called a snap federal election, and Canadians will not have a lot of time to think about who they will want to vote for. Jeremy Charon has more over in Ottawa.
Walking out of Rideau Hall after meeting with Canada's Governor-General just days after being sworn in, Mark Carney is sending Canadians to the polls.
I've just requested that the Governor-General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th.
A snap election that comes 6 months ahead of schedule, a 37-day campaign, the shortest allowed under election rules, now officially underway as leaders make their pitches to Canadians.
We have made major changes to put Canada in a stronger position, a much stronger position. But much more needs to be done, and that's why I'm standing here.
From Rideau Hall right to the Plain, Liberal leader Mark Carney took off to the East Coast for a campaign rally.
Morning, everyone. Beautiful day.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre launched his campaign alongside his family in Gatineau, Quebec, before the writs of the election were even issued.
We cannot afford another lost Liberal decade. We need to put Canada first for a change with a new Conservative government.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh pitched his plan in Ottawa.
You deserve a government that has your back, and we will fight like hell to make sure that happens.
While the Bloc Québécois face questions about losing momentum in Quebec to the Liberals since Justin Trudeau's resignation.
I read Newton. What goes up goes down.
And the Green Party says it hopes to gain seats in this election.
As many as we can. And that's in the hands of Canadians.
And while the leaders will be campaigning against each other for the next 5 weeks, they'll also be pitching themselves on the single biggest issue of this campaign, Donald Trump.
He wants to break us so America can own us. We will not let that happen.
You can be respectful and firm, and I believe we have to be both. I will insist the President recognize the independence and sovereignty of Canada.
Elon Musk has endorsed Pierre Poilievre. Donald Trump has endorsed Mark Carney. I'm the only candidate 100% not endorsed by anyone in the Donald Trump administration.
Now, on day one of the campaign, Mark Carney was the only leader to make a new pledge to Canadians, a tax cut for the middle class.
Now on to local news, an announcement that was made by Jonathan Wilkinson, who is the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources, revealed that the future Cedar LNG facility that is set to be built in Kitimat is going to be receiving quite the financial boost. The federal government, through the Strategic Innovation Fund, will be putting forth a total of $200 million towards the project that is expected to cost almost $6 billion in total. Cedar LNG, unsurprisingly, has been very receptive to this support and believe that these gifted funds from the government are key to helping build what has been touted to eventually become one of the lowest emitting LNG facilities in the entire world. The facility is expected to be up and entirely operational by sometime towards the end of 2028. And the Terrace RCMP have released a report that detailed some of the most notable incidents that they encountered throughout most of the previous week. One part of the report mentioned that a highway patrol officer noticed that a Ford Escape was traveling at 116 kilometers per hour in an 80 kilometer hour zone on Highway 113 at the end of last week. When the officer stopped the vehicle, he found out that the driver not only was suspended from the drive-in, but that he also had a warrant out for his arrest over in Vancouver. The man was then arrested for all of his offenses and later got a future court date for driving while suspended, alongside several violation tickets for speeding and having no insurance, as well as a vehicle impound notice. And a 32-year-old man in Burns Lake is facing charges related to an alleged assault and arson case that happened in the later half of last week. The RCMP learned about this case when they got word that a man was seriously hurt after being hit by a vehicle, with them also discovering that the victim's home was then consumed by the flames. The suspect in this case was identified as Gerald Eric Noth, who officers found at his home and then arrested him without any incident. Noth has been charged with the likes of aggravated assault, arson, dangerous operation of a motor vehicle, as well as breach of undertaking, and he's currently scheduled to appear in court by video tomorrow. And the pushback from Canadians against U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff threats evolved into a massive rally in Toronto this past weekend, and it was called Elbows Up Canada, which is meant to display national pride. While most protests have been peaceful, some have been taking it to a whole new level. CTV's Kamal Karamali was on site.
National pride and unity on full display from the hundreds of people here at this Toronto rally, each one of them with a story on why it was important to be here today. There's the immigrant from Afghanistan.
As a Canadian immigrant, I'm so proud to be here to support Canada.
The LA-based comedian who moved back home.
Now we are looking to make Nova Scotia our home.
And the dog dad from Niagara Falls, a border city whose economy has been hit hard.
Show America that we're a sovereign nation.
Now, national pride isn't the only thing being shared at this rally. People are also handing out these.
Here you go.
Thank you so much. Pins of the maple leaf.
The rally, called Elbows Up Canada, began when Canadian comedian Mike Myers did this on TV, a hockey term meaning to defend yourself and get ready for a fight, in response to U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs on Canadian goods and pushing for Canada to become a 51st state. Ottawa hosting the first Elbows Up rally on Parliament Hill earlier this month, and in another show of solidarity today, the City of Toronto put up these Love Local signs to encourage buying local, while Ottawa launched an ad campaign against tariffs along key U.S. highways in red states. Rallies also being held at Tesla dealerships across the country, including this one today in Vancouver and in Kitchener, protesting the car manufacturer's CEO, Elon Musk, who has close ties with Trump. But some have taken it to the next gear, vandalizing vehicles, even lighting them on fire. In Vancouver, police have seen 8 attacks on Tesla dealerships since the new year.
Violence is not the Canadian way.
Back at the rally in Toronto, a more peaceful way to vocalize opposition in hopes their voices will be carried all the way to the White House. Kamal Karamali, CTV News, Toronto.
Coming up next, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith makes comments on Canada and U.S. relations. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith has made some comments about the upcoming federal election on American platforms, and some have called her out, saying that her words are benefiting Donald Trump and the United States. Here is Tyler Barrow from CTV News.
The federal election has been called, and candidates are now making their case to lead our country, but Premier Danielle Smith might be making the most noise. In a March 8th interview with the right-wing U.S. news outlet Breitbart, Smith claimed the tariff war was hurting the Conservatives' chances at taking power, saying, "The longer this dispute goes on, politicians posture, and it seems to be benefiting the Liberals right now," asking the Trump administration for help, adding, "Let's just put things on pause so we can get through an election." This political scientist calls her plea for help astounding.
Hurts Danielle Smith because it looks like she is supporting the United States in the middle of a major trade war against Canada.
In a statement to CTV News, the premier denied asking the U.S. to interfere in Canada's election, calling it false and offensive, saying, "Now that an election has been called, I would reiterate my hope that the United States would refrain from placing tariffs on their closest ally. I, along with the vast majority of Albertans, are obviously concerned with how vulnerable and weak the Liberal government has left our country after the last 10 years. On Sunday, Mark Carney addressed Smith's comments, highlighting her alignment with Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Trump.
One of the decisions that Canadians will have to make, whether they want a government that is unifying, that's standing up for Canada, and is taking focused action to build a better economy, or they want division and Americanism.
Well, my response is that the president has said that he thinks it would be easier to deal with a Liberal, and with good reason. The Liberals have weakened our country. He's been very blunt that he wants a weak Canada that he can target.
Rapp believes the temperature could rise on Smith's comments later this week.
Let's see what happens when she goes on Ben Shapiro's show this week, right? Another far-right podcast. Does she echo those same things?
Tyler Barrow, CTV News, Calgary.
And now we take a look at the local weather forecast for tonight and for the week ahead. Tonight on the north coast, it should be mainly cloudy with a low of 4 degrees and mainly cloudy conditions. This week it could be a little bit sunny tomorrow, followed by rainier conditions for the next week along with steady temperatures. The high will be 10 degrees on Thursday, while the low will be 4 degrees on Friday evening. On to Terrace and Kitimat. Tonight should also be partially cloudy along with a low of +2. For this week's forecast, it should be around the same forecast with a slight edge in temperatures along with some sun tomorrow. The high will be 11 degrees twice this week on Tuesday and Thursday, and the low should be 2 degrees on Friday evening. Tonight in the Bulkley Valley, there should be clear conditions with lighter winds at 15 kilometers per hour, a low of -7, along with a wind chill of -10 overnight. And for this upcoming week, there should be less sun than usual with rain and showers over the next 3 days and the cloudy conditions later in the week. There is also a chance of flurries on Friday evening. The high should be 8 degrees on Friday and Saturday, while the low should be -1 on Friday night. And now on to the roadside report from around the Northwest. For additional updates, check out drybc.ca. On Highway 16, there is utility work west of Skeena and in Daco, as well as Willowvale, as well as slippery sections throughout. Highway 37 has roadside brushing north of Lake Hells Lake, slippery sections from Kitimat to Port Landing, and compact snow from Porter Landing to Yukon border. Highway 37A has slippery sections, as well as Highway 118. The Nisga'a Highway has fog patches and water pooling, and Telegraph Creek Road has muddy sections. And these are what the cameras were looking like from around the North Coast. Still to come, the personal side of immigration after changes in federal policy. Hello again. Well, as Canadian businesses across the country try to move forward with an ever-changing tariff policy south of the border, there's another issue creating challenges, including recent changes to Canada's immigration policy. CTV's Sarah Plowman spoke to a business worker and owner facing that uncertain future.
For decades, in Sussex, New Brunswick, Mrs. Dunster's has been the spot for fresh loaves and donuts. What dozens of workers face is not as sweet.
Sometimes I feel very blank. I didn't think, like, what should I do? Where should I go?
Vineet Kumar moved from India nearly 4 years ago. He loves his job, but his work permit expires next March. As Canada reduces immigration, his path to stay and become a permanent resident is narrowing.
I wish I could stay for a long time.
Ottawa slashed its immigration targets for international students, workers, and permanent residents, arguing it'll alleviate pressure on housing, infrastructure, and social services. New Brunswick's spots for permanent resident nominees were cut by half. Priority will go to those in healthcare, education, and construction, slimming others' chances. Tariffs are not the top threat to this bakery.
The biggest threat to our business is immigration policy and the lack of available workers.
Mrs. Dunster's already expanded. Its owner plans to double its size. A fifth of the staff are like Kumar, here on a temporary work permit. The owner wants immigration to be handled with a regional approach.
I'm sure that different provinces have different needs. Our province needs more immigrants. It's cutting the number in half, cutting the number below the number of people that are actually already here working on work permits makes no sense whatsoever.
Employers and workers face a serious challenge, says this immigration lawyer.
For the first time in my career, I'm finding myself in a situation where I have to tell people there's nothing we can do for them.
With no certainty, this baker has questioned if he should stay, but he's chosen to hold out hope to become a permanent resident. Ottawa says his plan focuses on well-managed, sustainable growth. A spokesperson in New Brunswick says there are substantially more foreign workers here than they have available nominations. But talks are ongoing with the federal government to try to increase this province's number of nomination spots. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Fredericton.
And one of the more popular DNA testing sites in 23andMe has now filed for bankruptcy in order to facilitate a sale to another company. But some tech experts are warning those that have their private information on the site to stay cautious. Andrew Johnson from CTV has more.
You were so much shorter in person.
It's been used to reunite family members who didn't know each other existed, to solve murders that went cold decades ago.
These were real children who died a tragic and heartbreaking death.
And to provide people with useful information on their background and potential health conditions. But now 23andMe, one of the most popular DNA testing firms, has filed for bankruptcy to facilitate a sale. The company is telling customers there will be no changes to the way it protects their private information. Tech experts are skeptical.
This is a company with a terrible track record when it comes to managing personal data. They've already been breached once. Almost half of their customers had their information compromised, and it took the company months to actually fess up about it. And so this is a company I would not trust.
Another risk, a new buyer that decides to make changes to the privacy policy and who can access 23andMe's massive DNA database.
Those policies can change. It's hard for people to be able to predict or control how their information is used in the future.
If you're a 23andMe customer, there is something you can do now to protect yourself in case the company is sold or shuts down. Log into your account, download a copy of your data, then select the option to permanently delete it from the company's database.
Now we take a look at the stock market, where we have an increase in most categories today. The Canadian dollar is up 1/10 cent. The price of gold is down $5.80. Oil is up 83 cents. Natural gas is down 7 cents, and aluminum is down $33.50. In Toronto, the TSX is up 335 points. The Venture Index is up about 6. In New York, NASDAQ is up 454, and the Dow Jones is up about 598. Still ahead, a look at history of Canadians left or executed in China. Hello and welcome back to our final segment here on CFTK-TV. Well, after 4 dual citizens were executed in China for drug-related crimes, this is not the first time that Canadians have been held while the government tries to provide assistance from overseas. CTV's Judy Trin reports further.
Human rights groups say there are 100 Canadians detained in China's prisons. Earlier this year, 4 were executed. Beijing said it was punishment for drug-related crimes. Canada's plea for leniency failed.
I got involved personally to try to prevent these executions. It's happened in the past, and Canada is not targeted. There are many other countries that are of dual nationals.
One of the most urgent cases involves Robert Schellenberg on China's death row. He was arrested in 2014, accused of smuggling more than 200 kilograms of methamphetamine. Schellenberg was granted an appeal, but still sentenced to death after a one-day trial.
It is depressing, it is frustration.
Human rights advocates say the Canadian government needs to be more transparent about who is being detained by China.
We should be transparent in providing the accurate information about how many Canadians are currently in Chinese jail.
There are also concerns about Hussein Jalil, a Canadian and Uyghur human rights activist that China labeled a terrorist. He was arrested in 2006 while traveling in Uzbekistan to visit his wife's family. China has an extradition agreement with that country, and the Uzbeks deported him. After his arrest, his mother told CTV News he was tortured.
They forced him to sign a confession, or he would be put in a hole.
Because Jalil was born in Shenzhen, the Chinese have refused to recognize his Canadian citizenship, just like the 4 individuals executed this year.
Canada's ability to protect and speak out and assert protection over Canadians who are in trouble abroad is of paramount importance.
Successive prime ministers have tried to bring Jalil home. He and his wife have 4 children. The youngest was born after his imprisonment.
His family are inspirational, and they ought to be reunited.
Next week marks 19 years since Hussein Jalil was jailed. His family have not received any updates about him since 2016. But his lawyer says, as long as Jalil is alive, they will have hope the Canadian government will be able to bring him home. Judy Trin, CTV News, Ottawa.
And while the basketball tournament known as March Madness mostly carries American players who have made it a lifelong dream to play in the tournament, the sport has seen an increase in talent from our side of the border. Here's Alex Karpa, who has our final story of the day.
She's got a little fire in her, a little feistiness, so that's a good quality to have as a basketball player.
Dan Becker is proud of his daughter Tana, who is playing basketball in the States.
This is when she committed to University of Kentucky.
Tana's a freshman guard who joined the school's team last March, and now she's the first Manitoba-born woman to compete in what's likely the world's best-known college basketball tournament. Dan also played college basketball and competed professionally in Europe. He now coaches in Winnipeg and has been doing so since Tana was 8. From the minor leagues, Tana played prep basketball in Ontario before going to the States.
Of all my kids, she's the one that's the feistiest. You know, she's the one that gives you a little lip back in the house, has her own opinion, doing different things, but she also has that on the court.
Tana is one of 29 Canadians competing in this year's March Madness tournament. Canada has the highest number of representatives on men's and women's teams outside of the U.S., followed by Spain and Australia.
If there's any talent, whether it's size, athleticism in any part of the country, it gets found pretty easily.
Wes Brown should know. He helps pro teams scout for top Canadian players. He says there are several Canadians who will make a difference in this year's tournament, including Ontarians Will Riley and Ryan Nemhard.
A ton of really high-level talent, some kids that'll be first-round picks, some guys that are in the second-round conversation. So it's talent, they're on good teams, and they have draft potential as well.
There's Tana, she's a Kia Nurse.
Tana already met one of her idols, Canadian WNBA star Kia Nurse, who's also a guard.
It's been a great experience so far for her, so it's really impressive and it's exciting to be a Canadian hooper right now.
And of course, her dad thinks it's just a matter of time before this 19-year-old goes pro too. Alex Karpa, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And that'll be all for the cast tonight. We'll be back tomorrow at 5, 6, 6:30, and 11 o'clock here on CFTK-TV. Thank you very much for watching and have a great evening.